Hey, what's up, comrades? So, now that we've defeated Satan twice and then the Demon Lord, it's time to move on to our final. I don't know if it'll be final. I still can't find like the Mystic Arc, the fourth title, like anywhere. Not even just like a Japanese ROM of it that I can like clumsily translate with my phone. So we'll see if this might be the final title in this arc. Pun intended. So Mystic Arc, it's pretty good. So it is very much like Seventh Saga / Elnard in its kind of setup presentation and how it's a Japanese role-playing game. So you have a character, and this time you can have up to 2 companions depending on which world you go to. And yes, in this game, you go to various different worlds, starting off, and then there's like a home, like a hub world essentially. But the hub world is empty. The game starts off and it just shows various characters. I'm assuming the various characters that you can quote-unquote recruit being turned into figurines by like a circly square that flies around. And this includes the main character. But the main character is able to break free, which the goddess statue or the spirit inside the goddess statue is like, oh, no one's ever done that before. I'm very surprised. Ho, ho, ho. Come talk to me. And then she's like, hey, there's these arcs. If you want to get them all, you can return to your world and such. And you're like, cool story. So the way the game plays out is you travel different world maps and dungeons and talk to various NPCs to kind of solve their issues from world to world while you search for the arcs. And of course there's 7 arcs. Well, I don't know, I haven't beaten the game yet, so I'm assuming there's 7 arcs, just like there's 7 the 7th saga. What do they call them in that? Runes. There's 7 runes. So each character has like a weapon preference, and so if they use that weapon preference, they get the max amount of attack power from it. But anybody can use any weapon. But if they use a weapon that is not their weapon preference, I think they only get. And I got this from strategywiki.org when I was like looking up the different items and weapons and just kind of getting like a base idea of how to play this game since I don't have a manual for it. If you use a weapon that's not for their class, then they get. I think they only get 60%. So if the weapon gives you plus 10, and it's like a sword, which is the main character, which is Ferris or Remmer's weapon, they get plus 10. But if it's an axe that gives you plus 10, that's not their preferred weapon, so then it only gets plus 6. That's how I understand. And then there's like a armor slot, helmet slot, shield slot. When you're in combat, you can do lots of different things. So now, on top of like you can attack and have magic, each character learns like special abilities that you can use. So for example, the main character, and I say the main character because you can choose boy or girl, and the boy is Remmer and the girl is Ferris from the previous games, assumingly. None of that really comes up. They don't refer back to Brainlord or Seventh Saga or anything like that. It's very much like a sequel slash mostly kind of like almost like a spiritual sequel, but it's literally a sequel. But there's just no reference back to like anything that occurred before thus far that I have seen. And the same with Brainlord. Like you really don't get any reference back, which you wouldn't, because, you know, it's essentially like you lived, you went back in time, you died, your soul got reincarnated X amount of years later, like thousands of years later, and then you're raised in this totally new, like century essentially, that takes place like decades before the first game begins. So there's no reason, and then everything in the first game happens after this character dies. So there's like no connection that Remmer would have to like anything that occurred in the first game, unless he like received some sort of inspiration as to why, like a past life, right? Okay, so I chose Ferris just because the manual said that she had, just looking at all the stuff, it looks like she had slightly better magical stats, which to me is like always an important thing in these kind of games, because magic can really like turn the tide of battle a lot more than just like I can overlevel and just fight normally. And it looks like the difference is Remmer has long straight hair and Ferris has a braid. Other than that, I have not seen any difference thus far in anything that goes on. I'll bring it up if it occurs. Okay, so besides attacking and special attacks and magic, other things you can do are figurine. So you can turn monsters into figurines. I haven't exactly figured out what that does. According to the manual, you can use them somehow. I'm assuming you can either like summon like an attack. I haven't figured that out yet. And then it mentioned something about turning them into items or trading them for items somewhere in the future. So that's a thing you can do. So that's fun. I don't think you can turn all enemies into figurines. I've been able to do it a couple times, but a couple times it just seemed like it was not working. And I honestly didn't spend too much time on it. It seems not superfluous, but thus far it has been completely unnecessary. Like the way I play JRPGs is I just overlevel, and then I just kind of like enjoy the chill pace, especially with these emulated games, because I can just like 6 times speed and just walk back and forth and kill monsters for a little bit to gain a bunch of levels. Seventh Saga and Mystic Arc make that even easier because the monsters track you, right? And this game still has the compass from Seventh Saga, which is nice. It doesn't glow where arcs are like the runes did, and you don't get to see where like towns are at. But the map is it's like pulled out more, and it looks kind of more like a Final Fantasy VI. While Seventh Saga had I would say not a super unique look, but it looked. There's not much else that looked like it. Like it had its own kind of like set and style. Mystic Arc clearly has like it's using more of the data. It's like got more, the people who've been. This is like their 3rd or 4th game. Because I think they made another game that's unrelated. So they have a lot more experience with like putting stuff together, and like you can tell like the production value is much higher. It's much smoother. It has an auto combat system even for the main character, which is great, that you can literally just cancel as soon as you start battle by like pressing a button. So I have it just on because when I'm grinding, it's like just attack and heal when your HP is low. Like it's that much. Like it's not just like attack. Like that was one of the issues with like a Breath of Fire auto attack, which game came out around the same time, or Dragon Quest. Oh, no, Dragon Quest was more adaptable. So it's more like a Dragon Quest, where it's like you're not doing like a gambit system or whatever it is in Final Fantasy 12, but it's not just stupid. It's not going to just attack till it's dead like Breath of Fire. Like they'll main character will attack, and then when her HP gets to a certain point, she'll use her healing magic and then keep fighting. And so I can literally just like, hey, go nuts. And I can pay like minimal attention and just you got to click through the menu at the end, which is like you gained experience, you gain gold, which is makes it less optimal. But I don't even have to move because the monsters travel and they just like. And when you do the quadruple speed or whatever, like it'll like start battle, end of battle. You click, start battle, end of. It's super fast. So you like are crushing that level. So I'm always like 3 to 5 levels ahead of like where I probably should be because I'm. I just like to enjoy myself and be overpowered. But that's nice. But like I said, figurines, magic, a lot of items again that cast spells that you can just find. You can actually search real things in this game, which is nice. And it has a very interesting mechanic. Well, sometimes I will search like a pot and it'll be like, this is a pot. Or it'll be like, hey, you found this thing inside this pot. And other times you click on the pot and then it'll take you to like a totally different screen and have like this pretty like quote unquote hand drawn like pot, and it'll be like, what would you like to do? You want to examine it, you want to use the arc, you want to use an item. And this adds to a lot of the puzzles in this game where you have to kind of like figure out stuff. Like for example, in the first world, you show up in like a cabin and there's like a pot in there's like a treasure chest, there's a couple puzzles just kind of introduce the concept to you, which again, Produce does a very good job at this, like very subtle, like you could totally miss all this stuff if you just like walk out. But the game's already kind of set you up to be like, you need to examine things. And like before you even get to this world, it kind of introduces you to like this menu style. And so then this first cabin is like, you can click on a window and then the window's like, oh, hey, look, there's something on the corner. And it's like, would you like to touch it? And you touch it and you move it and then you see a button underneath. And it's like, would you like to push the button? And you push the button and you like hear a click. And then you come out of the menu and then you go to like a chest of drawers on the other side of the room and you click that and now you can open this, which you couldn't before, and inside is like a healing item, right? So it's nothing essential, but or I think it was even like a seed, and the seeds in this game permanently boost your scores. The bottles, just like in Seventh Saga, give you temporary battle related boosts, and then you have the same kind of like speed, attack, defense, magic, from magic spells or from bottles and stuff. And there's so many healing items. It's not just like potion 1, potion 2, potion 3. Like there was like honey, healing seed, potion, healing cookie or herbal cookie. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. So that it's just kind of everything's expanded and made the world like feel a little bit more rich with all this kind of stuff that you see. And there's a lot of items to interact with, so you can spend a lot of time just kind of meandering about. So it still has a bit of that. You could just totally miss something if you don't like click on everything. But if you click the button, which I think is the Y button on the Super Nintendo, it's the triangle on the PlayStation by default. I'd probably advise switching it because it's a little more awkward. And then the menu button is like the O button on the PlayStation controller, and then the X button is the cancellation button. But I mean, I kind of got used to it at this point. I was like struggling with it for a little bit, but it's like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. So I think that's all the kind of mechanics. Yeah, and then from what I read, there's some arcs you can combine with like your character to give them like different kind of weapon capabilities, or you can combine it with like a weapon that they're using to give it a little more boost or whatever. Oh, the game still has the defend and then attack situation, which I feel like was in another game, like maybe a Dragon Quest game, where if you defended and attacked, it like boosted you up, like Dragon Quest 8 maybe? I don't remember that well. But yeah, so again, if you defend, you take less damage, and the next round you attack, you do roughly like 1.6 or 7 times damage. So instead of doing like, I'm trying to remember, I used it against one of the bosses, instead of doing around like 20 damage, I was doing like 36, right? So at that point, it's like, it might not be worth it per se, but if like you get a crit during one of those, and then you take a turn of not taking damage, which kind of make it like that's where you kind of get the even out trade. So it's not that it's necessarily, I would say it kind of is better, but it's not always the right choice, because sometimes you just want to like kill the enemy, and like just spending another turn is like spinning the wheels, or it's like not going to be productive. I don't know if it works with spells. I didn't try it that much because there's 2 bosses, technically 3. In the first world, where I'm at kind of now when I'm starting recording this. And the second one is very immune to magic, so I just didn't use magic against it. Well, the first one like really took that magic and died fast. Okay, I'm thinking if there's anything else mechanically thus far to talk about. Anything else that comes up, I'll get to. But that's the gist of how the game plays. There's item shops, weapon shops, armor shops. Sometimes the shops change what they got. The game's story is very engrossing, but it's also very kind of how much you want to invest your own time into it. Just like Seven Saga, where if you go and talk to all the NPCs, you will learn a lot about the world, about the characters, their interactions. If you just kind of like talk to the main NPCs, you'll get like the quests you need to like open up certain areas or to move forward. And then you're going to miss out on a lot of like the character of the world and just kind of the different things. You also miss out on a lot of items. And then there's like little puzzles. So besides just the interacting with items puzzle, there's also sometimes you'll talk to characters, or sometimes you'll be in an area and it'll be like, oh, like they'll be like, hey, you want to play chess? And they'll give you like a chess puzzle. And the chess puzzle is like, here's like a bunch of pawns, and here's a knight. You got to use the knight to kill all the pawns, and if the knight has to kill a pawn every turn, for example. Or there'll be one where it's like it's the flippy puzzle, right? Where it's like it's a 3x3 square, and every time you click on there's like a face and a flag, and every time you click on the coin, it flips the or all the coins touching it, not diagonal, as well. And so you got to make them all the same face or whatever. Stuff like that. So that's interesting as well. So it adds like another dimension. There's some rock pushing, some lever pulling puzzles. There's some pretty intense puzzles too. So this is like it's like a good amalgamation. It's like an amalgamation of all the kind of best aspects of Seventh Saga from a JRPG perspective, and Brainlord thus far from a puzzle solving perspective. Like there's lots of the puzzles are interesting. They take some thought. Sometimes they take a little like, okay, push this up, push that down, didn't do anything. Okay, do the opposite. Okay, do this. In one case, there's an area where you have switches, and then it's like switch. You want to pull the left switch or the right switch, and then if you're paying attention, the box with those words in it is like bigger than it should be, and so there's actually a secret third switch that if you like click down twice instead of just once, and go instead of going back and up and down from the left to the right, if you go down twice, you'll go to the blank spot, and if you click that, it's like you found a third switch. It was secret. You're like, it's very clever, like the way they do this. Like this game company, I wonder if they transformed or got ate up by someone else, but I really enjoy their game designs thus far. Like they're all very enjoyable to just kind of like it's like experience. And then it has like that really kind of old school, or if you're a Soulsborne person, like new school way of approaching story, where none of it's really in your face. Like you can get like the gist of what's going on, or you can kind of just like play the game. But then there's a lot of like story to be had if you're like me and you enjoy that aspect and like the world building and like the interest. So yeah, that's the gist of how the game plays. Yeah. All right, so now that we've kind of set up how Mystic Arc plays, and again, if you've seen my video on Seventh Saga, it plays pretty familiarly. A lot more puzzles, which is like the Brainlord spice thrown on top, and it's pretty much just it's a little more puzzly, but Seventh Saga, and it plays a little smoother, and it's like a little smooth vanilla ice cream kind of situation. So the story. So as I was saying before, the main character gets woken up. And then the goddess, the voice in the goddess statue is like, wow, you're the first person who's done that. Come see me. And you go talk to him. It's like, hey, you got to go get all the arcs, and then maybe you can go back home. And you can look at the other figurines, but you can't do anything with them. You can see like the soul of the ninja, the soul of the ogre, the soul of whatever, all the other characters you could. Oh, excuse me. All the other characters you can party up with, along with some NPCs you can rescue at later points in the game. And then the voice is like, hey, you should go check out the sailing ship. And so you find that on the second floor of the building. I wandered around for a bit, just on this like island. There's a bunch of like random stuff, but you can't do anything with it. And it's like whatever. But you head up to the sailing ship, and you can like blow on it. Like it's one of the options, and it's just like it doesn't do much. And I love that this is here. Not because it does shit all, but the fact that it's like, why not? Fuck it. Let's type this in. Let's program this into this fucking tiny little cartridge, Super Nintendo cartridge. Good stuff. But once we touch it, we get absorbed into like this little cabin, and this is the cabin I was mentioning with the puzzles. And there's a lot of puzzles. You can pick up a bottle. You can fill the bottle with honey, like twice, I think. The honey heals you a little bit. You can open the thing and get the other thing from the thing. It kind of introduces puzzle stuff. And when you step outside, you're in like a barren landscape with like crags. And very similar kind of like ground to Seven Saga. And as we start to explore, we find 2 boats on opposite sides of this like crevasse. And so we enter the first boat. And then once we enter, we find cat pirates. Yep. This world is cats and cat pirates. Mostly cat pirates. There's one non-cat pirate in this whole world that we can interact with. But the cat pirates are at war with each other. So there's the blood hooks, I think. Blood hooks or blood claws. I'm going to go with blood hooks. So there's the blood hooks and the gun bosses. So the gun bosses are on the other side. The blood hooks are on this side. We chat up everybody in the blood hook camp, and they invite us to join them. So we become an official member of the blood hook crew. And our first job is to go fuck around with the gun bosses. Because there's an issue. So they've been at war for an indeterminate amount of time, but they've run out of ore. So without ore, they can't make weapons, and the weapon shop doesn't sell any weapons. So that's a problem. So we need to get that figured out. So we need to go sneak into we get assigned by Captain Bragg, I think that's his name, to go investigate the gun bosses and see what the fuck they're doing. So we head over there, and they will not let us in. They're like, go fuck yourself. But Captain Bragg mentioned that they have an inside man, so we got to figure that out. So once we get told to go fuck ourselves, we can head around and we find this big tower. Once we enter the tower, another cat wizard of sorts called Matoya. Yep, like Final Fantasy, that Matoya. It's not the same Matoya, but it's spelled the same in this translation at least. So Matoya's like, shoots us with lightning, which drains all our life. And she's like, oh, stay out of my tower. And then there's a little fountain where we can heal all our HP and MP. And it's like, oh, thank goodness. So we do that. And there's a cave nearby. So we head over to the cave. And I entered the cave before. I never went to the gun boss originally. I think I talked to the guy about finding a passageway in, and I just like was wandering around and like, they're not gonna let me in. So then I just headed to the cave, and in the cave is this giant like mole looking thing, and you get like a note that's like, we should leave that the fuck alone. It's probably pretty strong. And the game slow rolls you into combat. So when you first start, there's these like Bloodhawk looking things, and they go down pretty quick. I ground out just with them till about level 5, I want to say. And then we get to this cave, it introduces one new enemy, which is a skeleton, and is the only enemy in this portion of the cave. Anyway, so then I wander back to the gun bosses, and I finally get like, I might have had to go all the way back to the blood hook. There might have been, if I remember correctly, there was like somebody I didn't talk to that I needed to talk to. That's very important to remember in this game. It's like you really need to talk to all the NPCs, even if you're trying to cruise through. You don't have to do all their little side quests like I did, because there's a lot of side quests, and you know this is where there's like a guy in the basement in the brig, and he's like, hey, if you help me out with this thing, if you like give me some honey or something, I will give you good advice. And then there's like 2 other cats in the ship that are like, oh, that guy in the brig, he gives real good advice. And then I went and talked to him, and his good advice was like, you should listen to the other prisoners. So I go talk to the gun boss prisoners that are also in the brig, and they're like, ahoy, I don't want anything to do with you bloodhooks, we're at war. Yep. That was the good advice. And it never got any better. At some point you got to come back to this motherfucker to get like a quest item that is actually required for one of the main quests, but we'll get to that later. So finally I talked to the right person, and they're like, hey, go do this. I hear there's like a cave or something that leads to it. And I'm like, okay, good. Now that they've told me about this cave. So that's annoying. That is the only annoying thing I run into this whole first world, to be honest. So that's not bad. Because then I go back and the mole creature's gone. So then we move through the cave, and we end up coming up at the back end of the gun bosses, like mining operations, smelting operations. And then we run into like Pink Eye or whatever his name is, and he's like, yo ho ho, yeah, they got a lot of ore and shit here, but they're out of like potions and stuff. Here, take this. And he gives us he doesn't give it to us. He's like, you should go report back, I'll be okay. So then we go back and talk to Captain Bragg again, and then he gives us the insignia for the gun boss. So now we can go to the gun bosses, which is nice because they have weapons that are better than the rusted sword that we start off the game with. And again, this is a point where we can buy a dagger as well, but the dagger is going to give us 60% the attack that it like claims. So it's really not worth getting anything but swords, to be honest, for our main character at least. An occasional axe maybe, because axes seem to do have a lot more strength. So at some point that 60% might not be as big of a deal, but. So we find out that they have no herbs. They have no way to like heal or use potions, and that they're pretty beat up because of that. Because like when they get injured, they can't heal themselves and they can't take care of themselves. And so we wander around and talk to everybody here. And then it's time to report back. So then we report back, and we learn about that. Report back to Bragg. He's like very pleased with that information. And then I think at this point he tells us, all right, I paused to look it up just to make sure I wasn't being crazy. Yeah, so at this point, we get the the second. So the way this world works is that each of the ships have multiple levels up and down, and as we proceed through the main quest, different floors become unlocked. When those different floors become unlocked, we can get more key items or talk to more people that key us in. So we find out there's an like a cave to the south, to the far south, past this like floating shrine, where there's lots of healing items that can be accrued. Like it's like a noun area for like healing items and such. And that to get there, we have to cross a bridge that is controlled by the gun bosses. Also, we get a side quest from the weaponsmith who's like, what? The gun bosses have all sorts of weapons? Go get a bunch and sell them. I don't give them to me. I'll give you something nice. So I go and buy like 10 daggers, which each cost like 10 gold, and I give them to him, and he gives me 100 gold, so fair. And then also gives me this like mana healing item, so definitely worth it. And that goes back to just the extra effort I feel like Protos puts in a lot of their games as a point, is that there's a lot of these like little side quests. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but that was the one that was like, oh, awesome. They still do this kind of like funky, like there are side quests that you can just fucking be like, nah, I'm good. But if you do them, you always get something like beneficial from them. Even if it's just kind of like a minor extra item or whatever. One of the things we have to get is in the second floor of the Bloodhooks, we find this like crescent moon stone. I think that's where we find it. Well, I find it at the Blood. At some point here, in one of the ships, we find this crescent moon stone, which we need to unlock the bridge to go south. Because earlier I had found it just by meandering about like I do. And then I was like, oh, it's gated off. So then we go back, we open the gate, we cross the bridge. We see the shrine that's like on it's not floating, but it's like high up on like a pillar, and we can't access it. And then we find the cave. And inside the cave is one new monster. You see the pattern. A green slime. It's called a green goo. It's more of a goo than like a Dragon Quest slime, to be honest. And inside we find like a healing sapling, I think is what it's called. Or healing seeds. We find a bunch of healing items that I ended up using later on against the boss. But we also find like a thing that's going to be like, oh hey, they can definitely grow lots of healing items down here, and that'll help the gun bosses. So we take that back to the gun bosses. And they're super grateful, and the apothecary is like, awesome, I'm going to go check that out. And he grabs like a crew, and they head over there. And then when we head back to report in to Captain Bragg, he gives us access to the quarry underneath the Bloodhooks, because they are having a tough time. But there's like, people are talking about how like, hey, there's a monster down there, but I think if we can get past it, there may be some good stuff that we can get. And so this is this quarry is our first like real experience with the quests in this game. The quests that are very reminiscent of like Brainlord. So there's like there's a couple rock pushing puzzles. There's like the flag puzzle I was telling you about. Excuse me. And just you get extra items if you find this stuff. So I do. And then at the end, we bump into the Sandworm. Dun dun dun. Sandworm's the first boss. He was pretty simple. Apparently he's weak against ice, which I could have used to my advantage, but I just like pummeled him with swords attacks instead. And that was good enough. So no problem. When we head back to and then once we pass him, we find black iron. We take the black iron up, and the Bloodhooks are super excited because now they can make black iron weapons. And I'm super excited because after a little bit of time, I can buy those black iron weapons, and they are much better than the pirate scimitar that I'm using currently. We also hear that the dining room's closed down and everyone's pissed off. When we go in there, we find out that the main cook, Buccinelli or something, he has disappeared. And we find a heart in there, so we go and take his heart. And we learn from picking up the heart that, hey, this might have something to do with the figurines back in the shrine, because we saw how everybody in the intro movie, we saw everybody got kidnapped essentially. And when we talked to some of the like sous chefs, I guess, they mentioned that the same kind of thing happened to this guy. So heading back to the shrine, we find one of the figurines is like, oh, this is a cat person, something, something. So we use the heart on that, and he comes back to his world. Like the figurine disappears. So then when we head back to the cat pirate world, he's there, and he's like, oh, did you rescue me? That's awesome. Thank you so much, homie. And then he heads back. I also go back and get some more black iron because why not? So once again, Captain Bragg charges us with infiltrating the King Mole. But now that we've rescued the chef, enough time has passed that they've been able to produce some of these black iron weapons, and so we get a new black iron scimitar and new black iron armor, which is great. Once we are there at the gun boss, I think. Yeah, this is it. This is where we run into the second boss. This is where we run into the second boss, part 1. We go to the gun boss, and everyone's freaking out, and there's like, oh, there's a giant monster down in like our smithing area, and we can't get anything done, and we're trying to stop him, but he's going crazy, and like the captain wants to like subdue him and use him to fight the blood hooks, and yada yada yada. So we mosey our way on down there, and we fight the King Mole, and the King Mole is very, very, very resistant to magic, so we just have to pummel him with our swords, which I tried using a new ability I have called Flurry, and after using it a couple times and then attacking normally, I realized that Flurry must be like a like a multiple group attack, which it is, because it does like much less damage than just my regular attack. So I end up just like trading blows with this guy for a minute, and then I beat him. And then he runs off, and everyone's like, oh, let's go get him. But there's a cave-in. Oh, no, I beat him, and he runs off, but there's a cave-in. So then I go tell the cats, and they go and, like, open up the cave-in. I actually think it's this point is when I got the black iron stuff. Yeah, I think I got it after the King Mole. I think the King Mole's first. So then I go get my black iron stuff, and then we head back and head down into the gun boss quarry. Fight some new monsters. Things are going pretty well, and then we get to the very end, and we run into the Bloodhooks, who are also fighting the King Mole. And so there's only me and my 2 gun boss homies, and then there's like 6 Bloodhooks, and they're all battling with the King Mole, trying to do the same thing. And so we kind of nope out of there, and then I get told that I need to go. Oh, that's Amir. I need to go check out Matoya, because if I talk to Matoya, she's going to give me... I can get a potion that will put the monster under, like, my spell, and then we can use it to fight the Bloodhooks or whatever. So I head to Matoya's tower, and this time she's like, oh, come on up. And this is a super puzzle tower. Like, every floor is, like, puzzles with, like, pulling things, and you got to, like, cross over this, and there's tons of places where you can just fall, and there's, like, a big central hole that goes all the way down to the bottom from all the way up at the top, so you can just fall all the way down. And so we go through the puzzles. It's all pretty good. It's all interesting stuff. I'm enjoying myself. We get to the top. She's standing there. I walk right up to her and fall down a fucking hole down the middle of the whole thing. Sigh. There is 2 healing fountains. The one at the beginning that was always there, and then after you open the door and go in, there's a safe spot. And then on the top, right before the top floor, like on floor 6 out of 8, there's another healing spot, which I grinded out a little bit while I was there. So I climb my ass all the way back up, and I tell her what I want. She's like, well, if I'm going to help you, you got to help me. And I'm like, okay, bitch, how can I help you? Goddamn pirate cats. Fuck all of them. And she's like, pick up my clothes and put them away. Okay, Matoya. So I do that, and then she's like, find my glasses. So I go get her glasses and give them to her. And then she's like, all right, I need 5 ingredients, like fire scotch, an onion, a healing sapling, and like 2 other things I don't remember. And then I will make this potion for you. So we got to go walk around a whole bunch to figure out where the fuck all this shit is. And like the healing thing's like where it should be. It's in the healing area. The onion is like in the cook's area. The fire scotch is at the bar at the gun boss. And what are the other 2 fucking things I needed to get? Yeah, that's right. This is where the dude in the brig comes handy, because we need to get a mouse tail. So we go talk to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I had a mouse for lunch, and he gives you the tail. Sure. And then we need a chess piece. Chess piece. And there's a guy in the Bloodhook in the brig. He's not in the brig. He's like one of the guards who's playing chess, and you can do like a chess mini game with him earlier. This is the one with the knight and the pawns, where if you win it, he gives you like an item. So that's pretty great. So once we get all those things, we march our ass all the way back up to Matoya, and then she gives us the potion and then kicks us down the fucking hole again. Fuck you, Matoya. So now we got the medicine. We go back down into the quarry with the gun bosses, and with the whole crew's there, and the pirate captain, and then we walk in, and the Bloodhooks, their whole crew's there, including Alfonso, their captain. Not Captain Bragg, who's a different captain than Alfonso, who's also a captain of the same ship. Whatever. This time, so we use the potion on the Mole King, and he gets fucking pissed because we find out after we defeat him that there was one more thing we needed that Matoya had just conveniently forgotten. So we fight him, and this is where I needed to use a lot of healing items. He does a decent amount of damage, so we were like trading blows there for a little bit, going back and forth. Eventually, I whittle him down, defeat him, and bam, he's dead. And then that's when Matoya shows up, and it's like, oh, sorry, you had to do this one other thing too. Oh, you beat him? That's fine. And then the two pirate kings or captains are like, we're gonna fucking go down. We're gonna fight right now. And Matoya's like, no, you're all gonna stop this childishness. You're a bunch of bitches. Cut it out. And then all of a sudden, like water starts shooting out of the ground, and she's like, oh, it looks like you guys blew a hole in the water. Let's get the fuck out of here. So we all head back up to the Bloodhook ship, and then water fills like the whole world. So now there's water, and now the pirate ships are floating. Awesome. And then we're in like the captain's quarters for the Bloodhook, and there's the Bloodhook captain. I think it's Alfonso, and then the gun boss captain, which I can't remember the name. And Matoya's just like chewing them out like little schoolboys, and it's telling them they're pieces of shit, and that all this fucking stuff like ruined her tower, and that they're gonna go over personally along with some of their crew and fix her tower. And she's just like raining into them, and they're like, yes ma'am, roger ma'am. Like, what the fuck am I watching? I mean, she's like a super powerful mage and shit, but golly, they like take it like little bitches, like for real. So they go do that, and then we're told that, hey, that tower that was on the big thing, not the tower, the shrine on top of the big cliff or whatever, we can get to it now. We just need to take like a lifeboat. So we can take a lifeboat, and then we can go back and forth and get some items from both the captains, from the Bloodhook and the gun bosses. Their rooms are open now, so we can go get some fun treasure before we head to the altar, or the shrine. So we head into the shrine, and it's about 4 levels, and there's like much stronger enemies here, but they give much better experience points. So on like the second floor, right before the stairs down, or like right at the beginning, somewhere on the second floor, like really early on, there's like a healing well just like in the middle of the fucking floor. And so I just literally like grinded it out for like half an hour. Like I just let the game play while I like played Hearthstone on my phone on turbo, and just like click 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 after each battle, because monsters would just rush me and I would just like beat the shit out of them. So I grinded up to about level 15, which is not so much higher than where I felt like I should be at this point. But because I wasn't one-shotting everything. I was one-shotting like half the stuff, and I was like, all right, this is a good place to go. So then we head down to the very bottom, and there's a stone, and the stone is like some cryptic bullshit where it's like, oh, you must do 8B and 7Y and 6X, something like that. And more than that, there's a whole bunch of it. And I'm like, the fuck? And so I just wander around for a little bit. There's 4 chests, they're all locked. And then I go back and click on like the tablet again, and it's like, you have failed the path of power. Yeah, I think it's called the path of power. And I'm like, what? So then I looked it up on strategywiki.com, and it's like, oh, it's referring to the Super Nintendo controller. So like the B button, the A button, the X button, and the Y button. And I was like, oh, that makes no sense anymore. I would have never figured that out. So strategywiki.com also, or .org, also had a handy map, but I mean, I didn't need it. I just was like, okay, I looked up like a Super Nintendo controller and was like, all right, so B is down, Y is to the left, X is up, and A is to the right. So then I just went through, did it, and then it's like, da-da-da-da-da, here's the power arc, which I never tried using in combat, but probably just gives me more power, I would imagine. I should probably use it. Anyway, so I got that, and then I got a new sword, like the Black Bastard sword, sweet name, and some more seeds and shit to like raise my stats, and that's it. We got the arc, and we're done with the first world. So then we head back to the shrine. All right, now that we got the cat pirates all settled and taken care of, it is time to turn our eyes to the future. And the future is Fruitland. So we go back to the goddess statue. Not the goddess statue we save at, but the goddess statue in front of the shrine and our little island in our like separate world. And we were told by the goddess that we need to, that the power of the power arc lets us take one of the figurines like from the main hall or from the back hall, and that we can take it to a world, and when we infuse the arc with that figurine, it'll come to life and like help us. So now we can have a companion. So I choose the ninja, of course, because ninjas are cool, and I might choose the robot. It depends. There's like a Meiji healing lady, it seems. So I might choose her as my secondary companion just because it'd be nice to have some healing shit going on. And at this point, we have to figure out how to unlock and get to like the fruit world, which we have no indication that there's a fruit world aside from the guide I'm using. And I don't know how you're supposed to fucking figure this out. To be fair, when I was first searching around the island like many moons ago, I found this switch in the windmill that it was like, you need to be stronger to move this. And so I'm sure at some point if I just wandered around and touched everything, I would have figured this out. But I feel like the game doesn't really give you any good advice on what to do next, which is kind of shame on it, because everything else seems pretty straightforward. I even talked to the goddess statue a couple times, because again, I'm using a guide because I've never played this game before and I don't have time to like click on every fucking thing and see what works. But I gotta give that like a thumbs down. I feel like Brainlord and Elnard were both very good at conveying like what the next steps were. So this is the first time I felt kind of just really lost. Even in Elnard or Seventh Saga, when I was kind of lost in the open world portion of the first world, I felt like that was on me. Like people were telling me things and I just wasn't incorporating them into my brain structure the way I should have. Like they were like, hey, there's a castle over there. And I like went way off course to get to like a different castle that was also in that direction, but far beyond like this other town where I heard the information. So that's a me problem. This is more like, okay, now what? So I don't know. I might have missed something because I wasn't just kind of like putzing around exploring, but whatever. So we go to the windmill on the island and we use the power arc to jar the thing loose. And this is important to learn that arcs can do this kind of stuff because it comes up like very soon after this when we enter the world. And then so once we use it on there, then we have to pull the lever. And once you pull the lever, it's like, oh, something's moving. And you go outside and you see the windmill spinning. So then we can go inside. And again, this is more like, I guess I could have gone and talked to the goddess statue again and she might have said something. But I know where to go. But I head inside, and in that first main room, there's a door. We go through that door. There's a secondary door, and then there's a large gourd. So I click on that, and then it's like, would you like to look more closely? And I do, and then you get pulled into a watermelon house, and that's fun. So everyone here is kind of chilling. It looks like there's bugs attacking in the area, and this kid's complaining about his house being eaten, and we find a bunch of fatzos and some people complaining about the fatzos because these people, they grow giant fruit towns, and then they eat into them to build homes, and then they eventually eat themselves out of those homes, and then they have to use... Meanwhile, they're using seeds to grow like a new town that they move into eventually. I opened Tokyo. Oh, it is Tokyo. That's so funny. Tokio. It's the name of the ninja. That's silly. Fuck. And we find out that he is at level 1 and has shit equipment and like no armor. And so I buy him a bunch of stuff, and there's no ninja weapon in this first town. So I just give him like a sword or something. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. And I upgrade I don't know if I upgraded anything, to be honest, from this first town. They have a lot of like fruit-flavored weapons, which is funny, like gourd smasher, like fruit knife. So that's adorbs. And then we find out that this town needs to move, but that they need seeds from the next town over. But because of all the bugs and monsters, everyone's afraid to leave to get it. But if we can go do that for them, that'd be great. And then we also get rumors in the town about the next town, how people are acting really weird, and how even people have gone and come back have been like, there's something really off about what's going on over there. So I level up in the area for a little bit. I get Tokyo to about 4 or 5, and then we head on our way. And once we get to the Gourd Bridge, yeah, I think the first town's called Watermelon Town, but when we get to the Gourd Bridge, we find that everyone's a total asshole, but also that they bark afterwards, which is weird. And then there's one guy at the inn who's like, man, these people are like really rude, and I feel like there's something off about them. I can't figure it out. But eventually we find this back area of the town where there's like a leaf on a grate. So of course we set it on fire, because why not? Underneath is a dungeon, and in the dungeon is all the actual town people. To get access to it, we have to use the power arc again on the door, which opens the door, and then we talk to everybody, and they're like, hey, we could leave, but those foxes are just going to put us back down here. So if you can take care of the foxes, we'll come back out and like retake the town. And you're like, thanks for your initiative, everybody. I'm proud of you. But then one of the guys in the cell is like, hey, this like fried tofu, they love that shit. So if you put that next to like an altar, there might be a way to like get them to come out as fox people. And I'm like, I don't know why I can't just like go start fighting them now that you've told me the truth, but whatever. So there's a shrine in like the downtown area, I guess, or like the central plaza of the Gourd Bridge. So we put the tofu there, and then we go hide. And all the foxes come, all the people come over and they talk about splitting it and how happy they are, and then they turn into foxes. And then they're like, uh-oh, we lost our disguises. We better go hide. And then they move the altar out of the way and go downstairs. And it's like, cool. So I follow them. And in the first room, there's a treasure chest. I click on the treasure chest, and it's a fox, so we fight it. These foxes are kind of like mini bosses. Like, they're not just like normal enemies that are just like, I can like auto attack and sleep. They take a little bit of time, especially because Tokyo is so weak still. Like he cannot take damage at all, and he's like a shit weapon. So he's really just there for Warcry, which is like his first ability, which is pretty good. It raises our both characters' attack power just a little, but it's a nice little addition. While Ferris like does all the healing and attacking otherwise. I mean, he does some attacking too, but it's like very little damage. So we do that. We go to the next floor. There's another treasure chest in the middle of the room, and of course there's another fox, and then there's another floor. The exact same fucking thing. So after that, the foxes get tired of hiding, I guess, because on the next floor down, we just have foxes in the hallway, and they like talk shit about us, like, oh, you want me to sell you some items? Haha, you're dumbass. And then they fight me. So we fought about 5 of these foxes before we get to the final boss, the fox boss, which is a silver fox. Fun. And he's not any more difficult, really. I mean, it takes more damage and does a little bit more damage, but at this point, Tokyo had like leveled up a little bit. I even went back to the original town to like heal up before I fought this thing. So I came at it with like full force, and it just took a minute, and finally got that motherfucker down. And then once I come back out of the hole at that point, and then the whole time people are like, oh, they got an arc in the Gourd Bridge from like the Watermelon Town. I get to the underground of Gourd Bridge, and they're like, oh, I think the foxes have an arc. They were talking about it. And then when I kill the fox boss, he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't have no arc. And you're like, fuck you, fox boss. You're the worst. So I save all the people. We go back up. I can use the inn, which is nice. And we can buy new items. I can finally get the Gourd Smasher, which is the reason I know what that is because that's Tokyo's like first ninja weapon that he can really use. That specialty is for him. There's a puzzle where you do like one of those like you move pictures around to create the picture, right? Like a picture moving puzzle of an apple. And if we beat that, we get some item. I assume it's from the priestess because it's like a staff. But I don't have her in my party, so whatevs. And then, but it's fun. It's like the puzzle thing, right? And we can buy, so Gourd Smasher. That's about it. That's one weapon. And then we talked to the item shop guy, and he's like, well, I have these seeds, but there's something wrong with them. I don't know what it is. Maybe you should go talk to your goddess. And you're like, thank you for the obvious thing I should do. So we take the seed, like a grape seed, and what was the other one? Pumpkin? No, pineapple seed, which pineapples don't have seeds, by the way, but whatever. You literally just take a pineapple and plant it, and then it creates like 2 new pineapples. That's how pineapples exist. So, but whatever. We wander back over to the shrine again, and there's some like seed stuff. There's seed figurines just lying in these like not barrels. What's it called? Boxes. In these boxes by the gourd that transports us to Fruit Town. So when we use the seeds we got from the fruit country on the seed figurines, we like trade them out or something, and we take the figurines, or we just were able to like collect the figurines. And once we collect the figurines, we can go back, and as soon as we go back to like fruit country, the figurines turn into actual seeds that we can actually use. Then we wander back over across the Gourd Bridge, and we find the giant tree, but we also find these patches. And when we enter these patches of like, they're kind of, so there's a lot of green and brown. Like a normal world, there's like some areas that are like the brown ground, and there's areas like green ground. And then we find these areas of brown ground surrounded by green. And so, I played enough video games in my time where it's like, that's obviously someplace like I gotta go, especially these role-playing games. So when I enter, there's 2 of them, and they're both like north of the Watermelon Town, but like across like a crevasse again. So we gotta like circle all the way around the Gourd Bridge. But one is the grape seed. As soon as I walk in, it's like, you plant the grape seed. And then I walk in the other one, and it's like, you planted the pineapple seed. Congratulations. And then, all right, so now we've planted the seeds. We go back and tell the elder that we've planted the seeds, and he is super juiced up about the whole situation. But there's an issue, the bugs. Of course, the bugs. So he's like, I don't know. I'm surprised they didn't have the arc, something over there, but thank you for planting the seeds. We'll have to get moved over soon. Some people aren't going to want to go because they're fat SOBs or whatnot, but Yeah, I don't know, but we can't really move until we take care of this bug situation. So I wish someone would help us with that. And you're like, oh, motherfucker. All right, yeah, where are these bugs at? They're in the western forest, or there's a tree or something. Like, all right, I'm gonna go take care of these fucking bugs for you. So me and Tokyo head over and climb up this tree, and it's got some puzzles. Like, they're pretty straightforward. They're what do you call it? Lever puzzles to open pits and to really make a chest open. None of them are that crazy. I got through them pretty quick, and there's not that much experimentation. And I'm pretty over. I feel like I'm pretty over level because I'm not having too many problems. Like these bugs are definitely a little bit tougher. The foxes were like mini bosses, but outside of that, oh, I did run into some crazy fucking like fire mammoth, and this is one of those things where, I started the game and then I had to like run upstairs to like do something because the baby was making some noise, and then I came back down and because the game was just like running, my guys were like fighting this thing, and I was like, the fuck is this? And Tokyo was only doing like 1 damage to it. And even Ferris was doing like maybe 10 damage to it. I mean, they were taking care of it because they can both heal. Because I gave Tokyo a whole bunch of like healing items to use, and they killed it. But I was like, the fuck was that? Because most enemies around here are not even like close to being that tough. And I'm like, did I find like some secret random enemy? It didn't give me anything special or anything. It's just, I feel like it's one of those things where you can turn some enemies into figurines, and that maybe I should have done that with that because maybe I could have like turned it in later at like whatever. I know there's a place eventually where you can like trade stuff for like better items or something. So maybe I like blew my chance to like have this sweet ass item by just like letting the game play in the back while I was like wandering around the house trying to take care of something. Whatever. That's one of the advantages of this game, especially when I'm like recording stuff, is that I can just like meander off for a minute and then I at least get like one battle out of the way if I'm just like standing around the overground or like in a dungeon. So anyway, we get to the top of the tree, and then we go back down the tree to the very first floor, and we run into like the Bug King. He calls himself Sly, if I remember correctly, and he's like, "What's up, motherfucker?" And you're like, "Hey, you gotta leave those people alone." He's like, "Fuck you," and so we fight him, and he's pretty easy. We beat the shit out of him. I use like increase my speed. I use Warcry. Ferris got a new ability called. I don't know what it's called. It's not like Defense 1, but it's Defense 1. It just raises the defense of my guy. So after that, I just punch him in the face till he dies. And then there's 3 treasure chests in the room with him that are locked. He grabs them up and he's like, fuck you. And he like runs away. So I chase after him. And when he gets outside, he's like, no! Because there's a crow that has like grabbed all the treasures, or at least one of the treasures, and like flew off, and he's like runs after it. So then we go back to the Elder, and like everybody's gone except for like the real fatzos, and he's like, we're going to the Pineapple, man, I'll see you later, thanks for taking care of the bugs. So at this point we head over to the bugs, we were just at the bugs. Jeez. So we head up to the Pineapple, and we get to the Pineapple, it's crowded because there's not enough water, right? And this is something the Gourd guys mentioned too. And somebody else, I thought. No, that's it. That's all this here. That there's just a lack of water in these areas, so that's causing some problems. Oh, that's right. There's a fountain in the Gourd Bridge, and they're like, "Oh, I wish we had water here." But the pineapple's not growing as much as it should be because the lack of water, and so everyone's kind of crowded in here. And somebody's like, "Man, we should stay in that fucking watermill in this place." And they talk to the Elder, and he's like, "Oh, the crow? Yeah, the crow. The crow lives in like a forest up to the northwest, so it's time to go there." And one of the people's like, "Yeah, the crow used to be super fucking chill, but all of a sudden it just started like grabbing like any items that it could find, and it was really odd behaviors." So my boy Tokyo and I head up to the forest, and we meander about there for a little bit, and eventually find this old tree with the crow up top. And so when you click on it, it's one of those kind of puzzly aspects where you can use an arc, use an item, and you can climb up the tree, and the crow will just like knock you down. And then you can yell at it, and it just ignores you. But then you can talk to the tree, and the tree is like, "Oh, hey, what's up, homie?" And you're like, "Hey, you're a talking tree. That's cool." And it's like, yeah, so the crow's all pissed off and like picking stuff up, or sad and picking, so she's collecting things because her like Chicoletta like got turned into a figurine or got disappeared, and all it left was like this heart. And she's super sad about it, so she's like collecting things to like remember her hatchling or whatever. And so then you can shake the tree, and when you shake the tree, you get the heart of the baby bird, the hatchling. And of course, what do you do with hearts? We take them back to the shrine. So we take the bird figurine back to the shrine. Oh, we don't take the bird. We take the bird heart back to the shrine where we get the bird figurine, and then we wander all the way back up to the crow's nest. And right when we get to like the tree where the crow is, the heart and the figurine combine themselves automatically, and then the hatchling becomes like a full bird, and she flies up to her mother, and they like fly around for a little bit, and then they take off. And then we can climb up the tree and get the grape seed back, because that's one of the things she stole. Oh, before we can get the ark and the other treasures that the crows stole from the beetle Sly, S-L-Y, shows up, and he steals his stuff back, and then he bumps into us, and he's like, oh, fuck! And he like runs away again. So eventually we're going to have to take care of that asshole and get the Ark of Light, I think is the next one. So... we talked to the tree. The tree's really happy that you did such a good job, and he says the forest is going to calm down now, which it does not. You fight your way out of this fucking maze of forest, which it is a maze, because in this part, it's not just like you're in like a forest level with like forest background stuff and shit. It's like you have to go under tree lines, and there's a treasure chest I could not... Well, it's not that I could not. I didn't have the patience to sit around and try to figure out how to get to, because, yeah, nothing in this game has really been like, oh, I got to get all the treasures. It's another one of these things where it's like, I have a lot of money, and I could just buy healing items and then weapons and stuff. So I'm not like, I don't ever feel underpowered or feel like, oh, I'm missing some key item that I need to get. So I'm like, if it's a lot of work to go get that, I'm sure it's just some bullshit that I don't really need. Which, if Produce's other games have taught me anything, it is just some other bullshit I don't really need. The Brainlord and Elnard have taught me very well that random treasure chests 9 times out of 10 just have bullshit you don't really need. So I'm like, nah, I'm not going to waste my time on this. So then we head back to Pineapple Town, and it's... Oh, first of all, we went back and planted the grape seed, and then we headed over to Pineapple Town, and it's grown. Now they have an item shop, which is great. And the elder is like, man, we're going to be in a lot of trouble if we can't figure out this drought. And like, what's going on with the water? I sent some people over there to get it. And unfortunately, in this translation, or maybe in like the original version, they don't tell you where to go. But I mean, there's like this huge riverbed, which I thought was like a crevasse, but which it kind of is. But no, it's a dry riverbed, separating like the area in two. If we just like follow it to the left, to the what would that be? To the west, then we run into like a mountain we can go into, and this mountain is pretty straightforward. It's mostly puzzly. In that there is boulders that go down like a hallway, and you have to like avoid them by going into like little inlets. And it seems kind of bugged out, because sometimes it's like impossible to beat the rock from one inlet to the other, and if the rock hits you, it sends you to like an underground area, and the underground area does have monsters and a treasure chest, and we get some sweet banded mail, which is pretty fucking good. But then we can just, again, it's going back to the treasure thing, we can just buy it immediately afterwards in Pineapple Town once we cure the water problem. So, like, whatever. Saves us some money, but I have the best armor in the game at this point costs like 400 gold pieces, and I have like 35,000 gold pieces. So again, it's the Produce with their games tends to just like dump money on you and not give you anything to spend it on. From my previous experiences, it's just kind of like, okay, cool, I have a lot of shit. Like, so it's never a problem. And granted, I do grind a bit with the speed hack on, but still, it's like if all I gotta do is just grind for like, because I'm not grinding for hours, I'm grinding for like max like 5-10 minutes. And so if I'm playing at double speed to grind, that would be like 20 minutes. It's less than a half an hour to grind to a point where it's like I'm overpowered and have more money than I could ever know what to do with. Anyway, so we get to the end of this cavern, and it's like 2 big rooms with like maybe 6 of these stone quote-unquote puzzles max. And having a save state just makes this really easy, because again, it's kind of bugged. So like I'll go for it, and the rock will be like too close, and then it'll push me to the ledge, and it's going to come up and do it again. So instead I just save, and I just wait for like a couple of rocks to go by and then try it again. And sometimes there'll be no rock at all. Like I'll go up and I could just stand in this hallway all day and there's no rock. So maybe it's the ROM or whatever, but something about it's just kind of like, it's not fully realized, I would say. We get to the end, there's a pit where the water is falling into. So there's tons of water from the mountain, but it's all going into like this pit, and there's a huge rock, and like if we just push this rock in this pit, the water would be okay. And I'm like, sure, unless it's like a bottomless pit, like this thing should fill up eventually, but whatever. The rock will do it. So they're like, oh, if only we had somebody who was strong enough. So we head all the way back to Watermelon Town, where the Fatzos are still hanging out because they were too chunky wunky to like move to Pineapple Town. But now the watermelon's all sour and stuff. And they told me this before when I like stopped by on my way to pick up the hatchling figurine. So I give them some water from the spring that I got in a pot that the guy gave me when I was at the spring at the top of the mountain, and we mosey on back with him, and then he just like takes care of it and is like, cool, I'm gonna go to Pineapple Town, adios. And so now we have water. And so then we walk by and we see the grapes all good to go. And then we head into Pineapple Town. And it's a full town now. We got items. And like I said, we can buy banded mail. There's no new weapons for either character, but we can get new helmets as well, if I recall, like iron helmets, I think. And we talked to the mayor, and he's super excited. And they're going to expand even further, going to Grape Town. And so good stuff. And then he says something about this tree to the north, which I still haven't visited, but I have seen. And so we got to figure out what to do with that. So the new world is Kid City. It's a it's like Kid World or whatever. We get there via using the new arc, the light arc, to unlock a music box that's in the windmill. And once we play the music box and touch it, we enter an area where we're locked behind a cage. And there's what's it called? A plaque. There's a plaque on the wall that's like, find all the books. There's 4 of them. So then we go and we find this strange pot in the next room that has like red liquid, and we have to mix like a bunch of random stuff we don't have in it together, and then we will get like a mana restorative item, which are kind of rare in this game. From what I've noticed, like it's one of those things where I have a ton, but I just don't use them. And then I was like thinking about it because I was like, this seems like a lot of work to get like a mana restorative item. And you can also get an elixir apparently if you like mix like an extra item in there that the game doesn't tell you about at this point. Which also must be pretty rare because it doesn't exist around here. The game really hasn't been that difficult to this point, so I'm like very unconcerned about this whole situation. But it's always nice to have extra stuff. But I don't do that yet. I try to figure out where these books are, and then I finally find one, and my inventory is full. So there's no shops, and so I realize, looking through my inventory, I have like every weapon and armor I've ever bought, essentially, just like sitting in my limited inventory, and I'm like, fuck. So then we meander all the way back over to Plantville. I go check up on Grape Town to see if it got any bigger after the boss or anything, and it did not. I'm assuming at some point I'll come back and it'll have triggered something. This game is well made enough where these towns will probably continue to grow at least once or twice. I don't know about Pineappleville. That's a pretty like decadent town at this point. And the gourd stopped growing, but the grapes, I'm like pretty sure there's going to be more to that. So we'll peek our head in a little bit later. But I hit the shop in Pineapple Town, sell off like half my inventory because it's just like random shit I don't need. Then I meander back, and on the way, I hit up some quote-unquote secret locations in the Shrine World, which is like where you start. The first one is just some dudes chatting about some old bullshit, and there's a guy who will just give you money if you run out of money, and I say that, but then I glance up at like my unlimited funds, which are not actually so unlimited. I'm sure at some point things will be expensive again, but just in case you're having trouble with money, it's like a tree by where we got the bird statue, kind of like northeast of the main shrine building. If you use the light, you can. It's like if you just click on everything, stuff will. If it opens up something, then you can probably do something at some point. And so my initial exploration, I found a lot of random stuff, but I was like, I'm gonna check that out again. And then there's a cave by the beach, which I went to, which had a locked door. It's now. I think I used the light arc to open it. Yeah, it's by the spring water that I found earlier as well. And inside there, you can find the monster arena. So the monster arena, you can use the figurines that I have not been gathering to fight. And I essentially just save scummed until I won a battle, because the one figurine I have is like superiorly weak. And then once I got a little bit of money, then you could just like bet on other fighting thing. You don't have to use your own figurine. And so then again, I just cheated essentially to rack up like vast amounts of platinum, because I don't use regular coins here. And then you can use the platinum to trade in figurines you have to get items. And since I only have one figurine, I was very much about the whole situation. You can apparently get some pretty decent weapons and armor based on like the level of where you're at, is my understanding. And I was kind of glancing back at like the guide of how to play this game. But it seems like a lot of work when I'm really not struggling with anything. So maybe someday I'll touch base with this whole area. But it was interesting. I wasted a lot of time here just kind of fucking around. before I was like, all right, time to get back to the story. So then we head back to Kids Town. Now that I got plenty of open slots, I go find all 4 books pretty simply. You got to put them. There's 2 bookcases. You got to put each one in the correct bookcase. Which the game, if you examine, it'll give you hints, or you can just try every book, and then the ones that work will work, and you go to the next bookcase and use the other 2, which is the somewhat more optimal way to do this, in my opinion. So that opens the gate, and we meet these kids. It's a bunch of kids. They're playing like hide and seek and stuff, and then there's one girl who will tell you everybody's like dirty laundry. There's 2 kids that I could swear are the kids who disappeared in Brain Lord, like Vic and I want to say Johnny or whatever. So maybe this is where they ended up. Because again, these games are like super loosely connected. Like this one almost seems like a hazy dream, or like, I mean, you were in the original world. You're not in the world of Elnard or Brain Lord. You're in like a totally different situation because you were like figurine and then broke out. So we're trying to find our original world. So it expands upon like the multiverse, I guess, of like this particular universe. But anyway, so it's got some quirky stuff here. Like there's a big room that is like looks like it should be an inn, and then there's a book, and there's a bunch of beds, and then you go to like the bookcase, and it's like there's a really boring looking book. It doesn't call it boring; it calls it some other like fancier word, but it's a really boring book. Do you want to read it? And you're like, sure. And then it's like you start to read it, and then you fall asleep, and you wake up fully healed. That's pretty delightful. No other shops though. But there is a library. If you go to the library, you can use candy, which is another. So there's 3 currencies now, which you get candy from Candy Mountain. But you can't leave this town yet. There's like one door that's stuck that you can't unlock until you like play games with the kids for a little bit, and then they give you like they tell you how to unlock it. Which is just like, oh, it gets stuck. You got to like put like a twig or something in there and like unlatch it, or you got to use your tiny child fingers to like reach in there and unlatch something, because when it gets stuck, that's how you do it. So I'll leave it open for you, and we'll leave like a thing so it doesn't stuck again, so you can get in and out. But that happens after you go and you help Cynthia get her hat out of a tree, which I use the deck brush from the pirate level to do that, but there's probably other ways. You might be able to just climb up there, which was an option, but I was like, oh, deck brush is pretty big. I'll try that, and it worked, and I was like, excellent. And then all the kids are like, yeah, let's play hide and seek. And you play hide and seek, and you go find everybody, and they're just like scattered about. They have like fun little, ooh, so-and-so was tickling me. That's how you found us. And the guy's like hiding in a jar, and then one girl's just like standing there, and you're like, what's up? And she's like, I'm terrible at this game. And then she like complains about how she's not very physical, and she never goes to Candy Mountain and all this like random bullshit. And they talk a lot about Selly, I think, Seille, Seille. Anyway, Charile, that's how it would be in Italiano. But Chile, Chili. That's what it sounds like. So Chili's like sick a lot of the time, but she's like the big sister, and she's at this mansion that's nearby. So after you find all the kids and you chit chat with them a little bit, and you take like a power nap, they're all like, all right, let's go to the mansion. And so they all leave, and that's when you get the door unlocked. And so you head out too, and there's no monsters in the overworld. So you just head southwest for a bit. You can only go south. So I headed south and then west a little bit, and I just ran into the mansion. So I go in there. Kids are chit-chatting, whatever. You find out about this Candy Mountain thing, and that the only way to get candy is to go to Candy Mountain, but that you can only go like one day a week. And then you find out some other stuff just by talking to people and looking at, I think the library is actually here in the mansion now that I'm thinking about it. And there's like a room you can go take like a power nap in with the kiddos. And you meet Chile, and she is like, hey, don't go in that room, that's my room. That room's storeroom, don't go in there, but you can go take a nap with the kids if you want. And I'm like, this is getting like really intense. Me and Tokyo are gonna like to sleep in a tiny kid's bed together next to like a bunch of children. Whatever. So obviously the next place we're gonna go is Candy Mountain. And when you try to leave, talking to Chili, you bump into 2 boys who are like, we want to go to Candy Mountain, and What's-Her-Face wants to go too, but we don't want her because she's a girl, or she's going to slow us down or something. And she's like, I want to go. And you have to go back and forth and talk to the boys, and then talk to her, and talk to the boys, talk to her. And it keeps opening up more dialogue. You're essentially like parlaying on her behalf, it seems, somewhat, which is like delightful, even though you have a silent protagonist character. And it's a nice way of portraying that like these people are having like an active conversation while still not just having it be like text. Right, you have to go back and talk to them and kind of like go back and forth, which I like. Eventually she gives up and heads out. And then yeah, I'm trying to figure out where this Candy Mountain is so I can go get that in. So we head to this mansion, like I said, and we wander around. We find out about Candy Mountain. We find out that candies are what the children use. I've talked about all this just recently. And you have to talk to every single kid. Because people kept being like, tomorrow's Candy Mountain Day. And I kept going to like the bed area to try to sleep. And I was like, this isn't working. But I think what triggered it is I literally just walked around and re-talked to every single person I possibly could. And then a bunch of people talking about going to Candy Mountain. I don't need to go to Candy Mountain. I have enough candy. Oh, I need more candy. Oh, I'm going to go with these guys. Oh, we're going to go with these guys. This guy's promised me, blah, 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 blah. And then you go to then you walk into the mansion at some point and it's all dark. And it's like, oh, now it's bedtime. So then you go to the bedroom, you go to sleep. Then we got to help my little friend here, Apricot, I think it was Apricot, to find Ben, who's in the kitchen eating. I think it was Ben. And then before I'm allowed to officially go to Candy Mountain. And when I get to Candy Mountain, the girl with the two guys who were arguing the day before, she hurt herself, and so the boys are upset because they have to like take her back. And they also talk about how there's like monsters or something that were not expected. And there's also a barrier to get up to Candy Mountain. And the barrier is these 4 statues, and they just like talk a lot of shit. And then one of them's like, "What's the password?" And you're like, I don't know what the password is. And they're like, "Well, you can't get in without the password." And I was like, motherfucker. So then I truck back to the manor, and I'm like looking around. I was like, maybe it's on the stupid bulletin board. So I checked the back side because I feel like I've already read everything on the front. Nope. So I'm like, all right, let's check the front again. And then I finally get the password from there. So I guess I should have checked it before I left. That's my bad. I'm going to pause here for a second to discuss how I am like less vested in this game than I have been with Seven Saga for sure, but even Brainlord, like kind of surprising to me because I feel like I played Brainlord and I enjoyed it, and it was some frustrating like stuff, but I never felt like bored while playing it. I felt kind of like, I guess bored's not the wrong term, because when it was like the Platinum Cave or whatever it's called, the Platinum Shrine, I think. When it was like, hey, backtrack for the 45th time through this entire place, I was like, oh my gosh, right? Like facepalm kind of stuff. But it was like, I enjoyed playing it, and I would like, but this, it's like every time it's like time for me to get my like 25 minutes of like video game time in the day or hour or whatever I'm allowed after all the family stuff's taken care of and work and whatnot. I'm like, what could I do? And I'm like, I guess I could play Mystic Quest. Or Mystic Arc. Mystic Quest is a badass game. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. And this is part of the reasoning. I felt like with Seven Saga, if I just like wandered around and talked to people, I would like know exactly what I need to do. And then I would get like cute little moments and like nice subplots and stuff. And so I feel like, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if this game was just not as good or if the translation issue was there because it was like translated by, I don't have to, I mean, at this point in time, it's like, you never know if it's like machine AI or like machine language learning or whatever, you know, like if they just like computer translate all this and then like input text with like little additions. Or if it was like, you know, these people spent a lot of time like trying to think about like the best way to translate stuff. But I just feel like regardless, if you're doing this for free and it's not like a super passionate project, which it just seems like it wasn't, because the writing's fine. I understand everything that's going on when people are saying things, but more often than not, I feel lost in this game. Like I get to an area and I get like the gist of what it needs me to do. Like I need a password, but like I talk to everybody and no one's like even the day before when I'm talking to everybody, nobody's like, oh, there's the password's on the bulletin board. It changes every week for Candy Mountain, which it should be. Like this is this is not like some puzzle game. I mean, it kind of is, but it's like Brainlord was literally a puzzle game, and like things were pretty straightforward. Like you would get like your riddle or your hint for like the puzzle, and you could like figure it out. And even in this, you'll get to like some of the puzzles, because as soon as I get to Candy Mountain, there's a puzzle that's like there's 5 cakes in like a cross or like an X. I mean, and the hint is you need to get all the cakes in a horizontal line where they cannot be moved any further. And so I tried pushing them all the way to the top, but there wasn't enough room in the top, so then I pushed them all the way to the bottom, and that was the solution, right? But it like makes sense, because you're like, all right, so I got to look at like this room and see where like there's space enough to put all 5 cakes next to each other, because they're pretty big. And so obviously the horizontal, they got to be at the top or the bottom, right? So it's like it gives me enough stuff, or if I just kind of like think about it for a little bit or experiment, I can like figure it out. But when the game says nothing about a password except for this thing, and it's like I got this whole world and 2 other worlds that like video games have taught me that like there, and even this game, there's been some like backtracking to the shrine, specifically for figurines. But it's one of those things where it's like, do I need to go somewhere else to find this password? Because I talked to everybody, right? And then in this game specifically, it's kind of like Seventh Saga, only like Seventh Saga's like, hey, you want random secret items? You have to search every fucking square in the game to figure out where the shit's at. And it's like, bro, that's fucked up. But in this, but it's all optional. Like you don't need to do any of that stuff. Like I'm glad I used the guide to go get like my ice and fire cape because it was helpful in some of the bosses, but it was not essential. I could have just grinded myself through it and been okay, or just healed more. The battles would have dragged a little bit longer. But the rest, none of the other items are like essential. They're just like items that you could buy from a store. But with this, it's like key essential stuff I need for the main story is not like openly available, and you can search like everything periodically, right? And it's okay if it's like that's the point of this puzzle. In the case of like the bookcase stuff, that where I had to, after I like went back and forth and I came back to Kid City, and I was like, all right, you got to find these 4 books, and I just like searched every object in every room, but there was like 4 rooms, and they were kind of obvious. To be completely honest, like there was like a clock in one room, so I searched that, and there was a book in there. Then there's like the well outside, and it's like it's the only well, so I searched that. There's literally a book on a table, and I don't remember where the last one was at. It was like in a pot or something. Anyway, but it wasn't so obscure where I can't just like walk around and click on things. This is like you need a password, and so my assumption is like one of these kids is going to give me a password, or they're going to like do the password when they get here or something, and that wasn't the case. And so then I'm like, and no one said anything about like the password's here, and maybe I just missed it, which is possible. But I feel like at least like there's literally a girl standing in front of the billboard, and all she says is, "Oh, let's see what today's day is. Today's day is play hide and go seek in Blind City Alley or whatever," which is where like the Kid City world like begins. And then tomorrow is Sweet Candy Mountain Day, and you're like, cool. And then she should say when you talk to her, or when you see that, which should trigger for me to make the most sense is her saying, because you have to come back and check this billboard, is like, or someone should say like, oh, we always get the password from the billboard. It shows up the day of on Sweet Candy Day or whatever. Like someone should make some comment about that, right? Because that's just like, that's the game being like, hey, you got to talk to people, and like, which you do, and it just doesn't. So then I'm just like, well, maybe it's on the billboard. I don't know. Right? But it's like frustrating because this isn't the only incident. It's an incident that just occurred while I was playing this right now. But like other things have happened like this where I'm kind of like, I don't exactly know what you want me to do, game. So it just makes the game kind of frustrating. And then it's just like, oh, what kind of bullshit is this going to be now? So we get the password to head back. The password thing is actually fine because it's like ostrich eggs are pink and Stompus is the troll king. Holy cow, this freaking Mustang's going to run into me. But it's like it rains a little and people forget completely how to drive. So then we go, the statues are like, what color is an ostrich egg? Who's the king of trolls? Right? So you got to like remember or write it down. And like, I like all that. That's fine. So now we finally get monsters once we're in the Candy Mountain. And first of all, we run into Benji Boy at a save point before we hit the monsters. And he's like, oh, I lost, or like monsters attacked and I ran away, but Apricot and whoever, Kavanagh, I think, are still in there. And you're like, I gotta go rescue them. And so we enter and there's Candy Mountain and there's candy everywhere. And at some point there's like a plaque that says the candy's on the 7th floor. And I'm assuming that's the candy I can get to use to purchase things. And there's a lot of things to purchase. I just assumed monsters would drop candy instead of coins, but they drop coins. So my ever like abundant supply of gold pieces is continually escalating upwards with no end in sight. And let's see. Oh, so then we solve the cake puzzle and we get a choice between 4 items. I saved scum so I could see what all the items were, and I just took like a weapon that's for the robot, I'm assuming, which I'm never going to use, I don't think. So I don't know. The other things are just like generic items, so I was like, whatever. Let's see. Then we keep climbing up the mountain, and yeah. This next puzzle is interesting because it involves like moving cakes around to do the same thing we did in the first cave, the first puzzle, and then also answering like trivia questions. And there's like 4 parts to it. So we go to. I went to the right first. I don't know if I could go to. I might have been able to go to the left first, but I go to the right first in this like 4-way tunnel, and it leads me to this room. And the hints are like not helpful at all. Like at some point, I have to move cakes around again, and I literally have to just move cakes so that they like don't cover the entrance to the south, but that they can't be pushed any further south, and that they're horizontal if there's more than one cake. So just like the first room. But none of this gets explained. I get like these plaques, and the plaques are like, oh, you got to cover the entrance and then uncover it, which I didn't have to do. And and then one of them calls the cakes like a crate. So that was just like a misspelling. So that was confusing. This just goes back to what I was talking about just a little bit ago, where there's a lot of stuff in here where it's like the translation is really just not... It's like not getting me all the way there a lot of the time. Like I'm just like a little confused about exactly what I need to do, but I was able to figure it out. So it's not the worst case scenario, but it is a little frustrating. So in the first room that I went to, the northeast room, yeah, there was one cake, and there's like a little inlet. So I pushed it in there. That was wrong. So then I pushed it towards the entrance, and I just pushed it like slightly away from like the exit to that, and that apparently was the right answer. And then it teleports me to the southwest, which isn't a room, it's just like an area that I guess I couldn't get to otherwise. And the quiz is, what was the first quiz? The quiz was like, what is the most expensive item to sell? And so I chose the topaz because it's a gem. I obviously save stated before I answered, and that was the right answer. The other things were like a healing herb and stuff, so good. Glad I was able to guess that. And then it tells me that when I mix the topaz with the other like magic ingredients in that pot from the beginning of the Kidsville, it'll make an even better item for me. So eventually when I find these other random items like the barrier leaf or something, I can go back and do that if I ever find this stuff. So from there, then I leave the eastern side of the puzzle rooms, and I go to the western side, and then I go to another room with like 3 cakes in the northwest. Yeah, the northwest. And I push them all against the wall, but leave like a space for me to exit if I need to. And that, I guess, was the correct answer. And then that teleports me to the southwest. And then I get another question, which I don't remember. What was the question it asked me? I don't remember. It was something very obvious because I got up my first try again. So then we head up, and then we get to a new cave, which I guess is a puzzle room. And there's treasure chests on both sides of these like ramps that you're going. But when you grab one treasure chest, the other treasure chest goes empty. And okay, whatever. It's a lot of like kind of useless items. There's like an intelligence seed, so that's awesome. I love that. It's like free stat points. But then we get to the final room where all the candy's at. And there's our homegirl Apricot with Kavanaugh, I want to say. And they're super scared because they've been hiding up there because there's monsters everywhere else, and there's never monsters, and they're really concerned. So I fill up a bottle full of candy. I get like 63 candies, which is more than I could ever possibly be using based on what I know so far about people demanding candy. And so then we head out. And we teleport right back. As soon as I talk to them, like, ready to go? And they're like, yeah, we teleport right back to the mansion. And it's kind of late. So we go and we see that the one girl, she's like resting because she hurt her ankle or whatever, Kina or something. And then we talk to Salel, and she's like, thank you so much. I can't believe there's monsters that came from like the riverbank. Oh, sorry, don't just ignore me. She's clearly like shady as fuck, hiding stuff. Chiele. And, but we go to sleep and wake up the next day. And did we go to sleep at this point? No, you know what? It might still. Yeah. We go to sleep, and then it's like play inside day or whatever. And then we're finally able to like buy the playground heart from the one chick who was like hoarding it. And so we take that, obviously. Oh, and she also mentions like, oh yeah, I was playing with the heart, and then I went to the bathroom, and I heard a strange voice say something about I'm in the boat room. And I was like, oh, thank God this part was translated correctly. I don't know how the fuck I would have found that otherwise. So then you head all the way back to the shrine, and you go to the room with the boat that took you to the pirate cats. And there's like a shelf in there, and you search it, and then and then you use the heart of, and then that gives you the figurine. It's like awesome. So then we head back, and as soon as we get back to like the mansion, the oh, and at this point there's monsters in the overworld now, so the children all have to like stay inside. But then you release the playground, and everyone's like super pumped and super jazzed. And then you talk to these boys, and they're talking about like a hydra in some sort of like water hole or something, and they're arguing about that. And then you kind of like check on everybody, and then it becomes nighttime, and then you see the boys again, or you try to go to bed, but then Xena, Xena, I think, or Zeena, something like that. She's like, no, you got to find these boys. They should be here. Why aren't they here? I'm on like bed duty for the night or whatever. And so you go find them. They're in the kitchen fucking around, talking about this Hydra thing. Like, we're going to go see this Hydra tomorrow. We're going to do it. We're going to sneak out if we have to. We're going to do it. And you're like, cool story. And then one of them's like, oh, shoot, we got to go to bed. And so then we all go to sleep, and then we get up, and then there's just like all this like whispers about like Chile's being so mean. Oh, at some point after I restore the playground, I go talk to Chile, and she's like, oh my gosh, can't believe you did that. Maybe you can defeat Chimera. And I'm like, Chimera? And then this like crazy looking thing like appears out of the fireplace, and she's like, oh, ooh, you should go. And then she like kicks me out of the room, and then I hear her talking to like a crazy thing that's talking about like, you need to come to the basement and perform our magical bullshit. Sus as fuck. All over the place, right? Like super shady, like the fuck's going on? And then someone else like mentioned some shady stuff that she's been doing lately too. Now she hasn't been herself and hasn't been playing with everybody, and it's just causing a lot of problems. So there's definitely something sketchy going on with her. But that's the point when we go to bed again. After we talk to everybody and get the boys to bed, and then we wake up the next morning and everyone's like freaking out because I think Vince is his name, is like disappeared, or he left, and there's like a big fight. And you know, everyone's like really pissed off. A lot of people are like, there's like people who are like with Chile, and there's people who are like mad at Chile for like doing whatever she's doing. Assuming with like not letting the boys go check out the Hydra Den or whatever. Hey comrades. Okay, so spoiler alert, I guess. The game completely stopped working. So after Candy Mountain we head back. We trade our candy for opening shops and doing other stuff, and then we're able to get the heart that we need so we can go restore the playground, which, you know, gives us good vibes with Chile. And I think I mentioned this already, but sorry, I'm like completely discombobulated. I've been working on this fucking game for like a day straight, trying to get it to work. Not a full day, obviously, I have like a life, but it was kind of disheartening. So anyway, yeah, she gets in like a weird argument with Chimera, and there's some shady shit going on with that. But then we talk to some kids, and they're like, oh, we're going to go find the Hydra. And they're like, this guy doesn't believe that we saw Hydra, so we're going to go prove it to him by going through this forest. And then we go through various machinations to like, it's like the wrong day to go into this forest, and there's like a puzzle, and then we have to go back and like figure out the puzzle in the back of this like, where do we find the puzzle? Oh, and it's in this book, and the book has a torn page, and the kid who tore the page used it for a cookie, and then he gave some of the cookie to someone else. Yeah. Right? So that keeps that's a thing. So we go from we go through this whole process, and then we get through the maze, and then we get to like this guy, and he's like, oh, what's the password? Oh my Jesus. Give me strength. So then we gotta track down these other boys, because one boy like guessed the password, but the rest did not. So now we gotta like track down the boys who didn't make it through the cave, or didn't make it through the password, because the other one's like in the cave, and they're like hanging out back at like fucking Blindside Alley. So we talk to them, and they're like, oh yeah, it's in the fireplace. And that's when we go to the fireplace, and then we get like the password, and then we gotta and then we shuffle on back to the they call it like the One hole or something. So we head back there, and we finally get through, and the kids go through, and they race to find their friend, and then, you know, we're like in a waterfall cave. It's kind of cool. And at the very end, we bump into Hydra, and we beat the shit out of him, just like we do everybody else. And so and so after kicking his ass, we rescue the kid who, oh no, all the kids were inside his belly. That's right, that was cool. So we cut his belly open, and all the boys come out, and they're all naked, and they're like, woo woo. And so they all kind of head back, and you know, we head on back, and when we get back, we notice that there's monsters inside the mansion. Everyone's like hiding in a couple of rooms, like, oh no, what happened? Chile is in danger or something. And then when we have to talk to a bunch of people, and then we find the key that unlocks one of the locked rooms. There's 3 locked rooms. One of the locked rooms is Chile's room, and inside there is the girl who gives us the key, and that opens up the room that leads us to the basement. The basement is very intense. There's lots of very interesting puzzles, like memorize the room, go to the next room, choose all the things that are different, like different doors. Like there's this extremely strange and obnoxious thing where you have like a chest with 4 knives and a chest with 4 forks, and you got to put them down in the order you're supposed to put them down if you're like some medieval king. I don't know how the fuck you were supposed to figure this out. Fortunately, the game doesn't let you just like flop around. It's like you can only pick up like one thing at a time. So it's pretty easy to figure out because you just like go in there and you're like, I want to put the knife down. It's like all the knives will not move out of here. All right, well, I'll start with the forks then. And, you know, if you know anything about etiquette, which, you know, if you don't, parents did a poor job raising you. The forks go on the left and knives go on the right side. But so that gives you like a little boost to know what to start with. And you just work your way inward. But then you have to go like fork, knife, knife, fork, fork, knife, knife, fork. Something like that. Anyway. So, and then there's like mimics, and you get an awesome sword for Tokyo, which was hella sweet. And the funny thing is, he just got like a new bow, like in the Hydra. This guy's definitely the guy to use for this level. He just keeps upgrading weapons like back to back to back. Like you got a boomerang, and then a longbow, and then this like En Shikato. There's also a few weapons you can get for the grappler apparently, but like fists or nunchucks and crap like that. Anyway, so we finally get to the end, and we meet Chimera, and we learn that Chile's like made a deal with the darkness. And the darkness promised to not release monsters into this world as long as she upgraded like Chimera. But then Chimera got like a little too hot for Tot and was gonna, you know, he was like threatening to like keep having her like kill the kids anyway and force her to work for him anyway, and just being a real asshat. And so you're like, fuck you. And so he sends a Minotaur at you and you kill that. And then he sends 2 Minotaurs at you and you kill them. And he's like, "Rawr, I'm going to kill you." And then Chile's like, "Thank you so much, you're my savior. Here's a bunch of magic. Like, take some of my life force," depending on the translation. And so she heals you all the way. And then you kick the shit out of Chimera, or decided. And then he's like, "No, the darkness will come get you. He's much more powerful than I." And then Chile's like, "Well, the darkness is more powerful, but thank you. You destroyed it. Now there's no more monsters, and you saved all the kids, and I'm so happy." And I didn't actually have the magical capabilities to like turn this guy into a better person. I was using the Ark of Wisdom. It's not here right now, though, even though I was just using it. And this is really what the reason I'm harping on this is because I'm so upset by this whole situation. So you're Ark of Wisdom. And then all the kids show up because they all came to like rescue Chile because they always believed in her and she's their best big sister. And she's like, "Let's go make pie." And you're like, "Yay, pie." And so then I head out and I talk to the kids and they're all so happy and they thank me for being there and they hope I can come back and play again someday. And Chile gives me like the key to like her closet or her storeroom, depending on the translation. And you wander in and there's 4 chests. And when I fucking wandered in, one of the chests was already open. And I was like, that's funny. And so I opened the other chests and they had like random bullshit. And then the chest that was open had nothing. And I searched everything in this room. And then I was like, did one of the kids take it? So then I go back and I talk to everybody in the fucking mansion again. And then I do it again. And I'm like, where the fuck is this Ark? Because I cannot continue with this goddamn game without it. And comrades, I literally spent hours scouring the internet for the extremely minimal amount of information that exists on this game. In English at least. And I finally found a guy, I can't remember his name, is H.J. Blow or something, or Billy or whatever, who's played through this whole game, right? Did like a live play. And so I found the video that takes place here, and the dude kills the Chimera, walks into the mansion, walks into the room, and that chest that was open when I got there, and he gets the Ark in there, and I was like, oh my fucking shit. So I like was losing my mind. So I literally downloaded like the Japanese ROM, I tried like 6 different ROMs that I could find, just like loading into them using like the save state or using like the save file, which I had to like change over and modify to get it to work, and all this bullshit. And every time none of that changed. I had save files from before I fought Chimera, so I went back, powered through that again multiple times. I killed that guy like at least 7 times trying to get through, trying to see if like, did I do something wrong? Is there something wrong with the translation? Did they modify something weird? Am I doing something wrong? No matter what, that chest was always fucking open. And I'm just like, what the fuck? When I get in there, right? Jesus Christ. And so finally I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to hex edit this thing and give myself the fucking wisdom arc so I can keep playing this fucking game, right? And I tried that. I tried downloading like multiple like save state editors and save file editors for emulation, and none of them, I couldn't figure it out. And so after hours of trying to like find some way to play this fucking game and not just call it quits, because I'm not doing this again. Not now. Maybe someday. I was unable. So that's it. That's Mystic Arc. That's like what I fucking got. Where is this guy? Where is this fucking taking me? What in the world? Sorry, I'm like driving to the grocery store, and I literally said, go to this grocery store that's 3 miles away, and now I'm 4 miles away from it. I've been driving for like 10 minutes. What a fucking day. So I apologize. Where the fuck are you taking me? This is like insane. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I apologize. Anyone who was watching this enjoying themselves. I got all the way here. The game literally will not let me continue forth. I'm at a point where it's like, I don't even want to play this right now. I don't want to go, like, because I could just start it from the very beginning and go through the whole fucking thing again. And I didn't just like try to hack and stuff too. I like restarted it, tried talking to different people, tried doing things. I tried going to different worlds. I tried going back to the shrine world, see if am I missing something? Was there some trigger I didn't I hit? But why would the chest just be open? So I hit some trigger somewhere. There was some bug somewhere that I did something that the game did not like, and it registered me having opened this chest, but not having the wind arc. So whatever I did, it seems like at the point where I went back to my earliest save, which was before the dungeon even started at one point, and ran through the whole thing again, and it was like, still the chest is open. So like, whatever I did, it was a while ago. I did something to fuck this up. I don't know what I did. And again, I went to, the only 2 places I could find information in English were that Strategy Game Net, whatever, I've talked about, and GameFAQs had like a little bit of information. And I think I found, I went to that guy's YouTube channel, and like no one was saying anything about it. No one said anything about it anyway. No one had this issue that I could find, where it's just like, and I thought about posting, but I'm like, what's that going to do? People are just going to be like, oh no, I never saw that bug. And so it completely defeated me, and I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I'm not playing this game, because I really don't want to play through it all again. Just to get back to this spot, and having wasted hours of my life to just get the same fucking thing again. Like, I'm not doing it. Why the fuck am I over here? Dude, I'm interested. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. Anyway, so that's Mystic Arc. I liked it. It wasn't as good. I feel like the puzzle aspect, my biggest complaint is kind of like all the walking back, which is I liked everything about Brainlord except the Platinum Shrine, because there was so much backtracking. That's what I'm looking for. And I feel like the thing that Mystic Arc took from Brainlord, besides like some interesting puzzle design in this style, was the backtracking. And I'm like, why the fuck am I doing so much backtracking? Like I go here, it's like getting to the Hydro Nest was like, go here, then go back, then go there, then go back, then come here, then go back, and finally I can get to this cave. And I was like, why is there so much backtracking? Like, this is kind of silly. Like, I don't mind, like, I'm in a location, moving around, checking stuff out, talking to people again. All that stuff's fine and good. But when I gotta, like, trudge back and forth, it's just like, what is happening? Why am I doing this? And so that was pretty annoying. Not as annoying as the game just not working at all. Like, I'm still like flabbergasted. Like, why? What could I have possibly done for this game to interpret that this chest was open? Right? Like, and again, it's not like I used different ROMs. Like, I literally used multiple different Japanese ROMs I found. Like, I used the Eon Genesis ROM. I used the other translation ROM that what is it? CD Romance had. I tried I found like a random one on a different website and tried that. And like, I don't know what was going on, but something in somewhere. So, because again, I think if I had like started from the very beginning, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe if I just started it, because I've been using the Eon Genesis translation ROM that came with CD Romance. Maybe if I just played through that, nothing would have happened. I don't know. But I'm not willing to chance right now, like, playing this whole fucking game again. And it's not a lot. I might be like a third of the way through the game, right? But it's still like hours of time that I invested in like getting through to this point, like grinding and doing everything else, and like it's just like, what did I do? What crazy bullshit thing did I do to cause this like event to trigger when I wasn't even in the room, or like as soon as I entered the room? Because it's like I do other things, like I fought the Chimera and went straight to the room. I went and talked to everybody and then went to the room. I like left the whole fucking world after, like, before even going into the Chimera dungeon, then came back and then went in there. Like, so whatever I triggered was like before a lot of stuff. Like, I triggered something at some point. Maybe like I clicked on the door the first time and it was like the door's locked, and that was like, now he's opened the chest. Like I don't know. Or maybe just entering the room, like for something I bugged something, or something clicked something else, and then this, or maybe just the ROM's messed up. I don't know. It's so crazy. Anyway, so yeah, I'm pretty disappointed. This just happened like today, like this morning, and so I don't know. Maybe someday I'll get back to this and finally play this game that I've been trying to play for like 30 years. But whatever. All right, cool. Well, catch y'all later. Bye.